Hine ha'om hayotzim Mitzrayim. Behold, this people, this nation who had left Egypt, v'yechasesein ha'oretz, and they cover the eye of the earth, of the land. Atam l'chol kovali yoso. Now, meaning with immediacy, you should curse them. Ulai ucha lilochem bo v'gerashtiv. Now, it's important. The words, what he's telling Hashem right now is not exactly what Balak had said. The term he had used, the different levels of curses. What Bilam had said, what Balak had said to Bilam orally. Orally means curse, but it's a lesser type of a curse. Kava is a curse that there's no survivor of that curse. It's a curse which is the most extreme level of curse. So he's saying to Hashem that Balak had commissioned me to curse them at the most extreme level, which he did not. And he said, and what does he want me to accomplish? V'gerashtiv. To drive them off the face of the earth. They should be driven out of existence. Take a look at Rashi. Kavali, zukosha me'eroli. This term of kava is a much more extreme level of curse. Shumnoke v'farish. Gerashtiv min ha'olam. Gerashtiv means he should be driven from existence. Ubalak lo'amar v'gershtenu min ha'oretz. Balak only requests they should be driven out of the land, meaning just keep them away from us. Einu vakesh elo lasi me'olai. Balak's request is just keep them away from us, keep them at arm's length. Ubilam hoyosonam yosim Balak. Bilam had hated the Jews even more than Balak, because again, as I mentioned yesterday, besides Bilam personifying evil, and that's why he gave the final solution in Egypt, but besides, the existence of the Jews anywhere is a disgrace that he can't live down till the end of time, if they exist. Because he originally had said not one Jew will escape from Egypt. When Moshe had fled from Egypt, everybody was shocked. After he killed the Egyptian, he was able to flee. Nobody could understand how was it possible. If Bilam had put in place, through sorcery, this invisible barrier that you couldn't break through this barrier, how is Moshe able to escape? Okay, it's one person. But not only one person escaped, millions of people left Egypt. So wherever the Jews are, it's a public embarrassment to Bilam. It immediately undermines his credibility. Therefore, for Bilam, he wants to take them out. They shouldn't exist anywhere in the world. Balak, it's a personal issue. We want to be protected. We're concerned we're not going to survive. So keep them away from us. Bilam, on the other hand, his whole essence was his ego. This totally negated him and told the world who he really is. Okay? V'yom Elokim el Bilam lo se'etchi moim. Hashem says to Bilam, don't go with them. Lo sor esa'om. Hear this? He said, I was commissioned to use the term kovo, which is more extreme than ta'or. And ta'or is what is the term that Balak had said. Hashem says lutor, meaning not only you shouldn't be covering them, even the lesser curse, ki borchu, because they're blessed. You shouldn't curse them because they're blessed. Rashi, lo se'etchi moim, oma lo im kain al kalim b'makomi. Hear this. You have to understand this. Don't go with them to curse them where they're going. He says, if that's the case, I'll curse them from where I am. No, I don't want you to curse them whatsoever, wherever you are. So Bilam says, if I can't curse them, let me bless them. The Jews don't need your bracha, ki baruchu, because they're blessed. Moshe Omrim, there's an allegory, they say, Litzira, to this titsi fly, lo miduvshach, lo miuktzach. We're not interested in your honey, we're not interested in your sting. Because if you take one, one is the equivalent of the other. Your blessing is a curse. And the reason is, as I mentioned, there's a posuk, From evil, only evil emanates. Even the blessing is coming from a source which is evil. It can be no good. Something which is tainted. It seems to be good ultimately. You have food which has botulism in it. It tastes good. It seems to be nutritious. Ultimately, the person dies. That's the blessing of Bilam. They don't need your bracha. It's like, and he says, like you say to the tsira type of insect, lo biduvshach, not from your honey and not from your sting. Not your bite. We don't want either. Because one is the equivalent of the other. Let's understand the beginning of the dialogue. Don't go with them. So he says, if that's the case, I'll curse them for where I am. He says, no, they shouldn't be cursed at all. He says, if that's the case, I'll bless them. Hashem says, they don't need your blessing. I mean, if Hashem says don't go with them, it means I'm against the whole concept. They're my people. I don't want you to curse them. He says, I'll curse them from here. What exactly is this dialogue, this back and forth? Don't you understand? If I said don't go, and the objective of going is to curse, so don't curse. He says, well, I'll do it from here. What exactly is Bilam saying? Benjamin said, and we said earlier, that Balak says what you bless is blessed, and what you curse is cursed. So if that's the case, why did Balak ask Bilam to bless them that should be protected from the Jews? Why did he ask them that the Jews should be cursed? Evidently, it's clear that the bracha of Bilam had no value, because bracha has to emanate from a pure source, and there was nothing good about Bilam. So why did he say it? It was false flattery, because he can't tell him your value is only to cursed. That he blessed in the past, as I explained, Measure says the whole thing was he was a fraud, because he was a astrologer and he knew the future. So person would come to him and he already saw in the stars, this person's become wealthy. This person's the rise to prominence or wealth. He says, I'm gonna give you a blessing, you should become wealthy. You should rise to this particular position. Okay? And sure enough, it happened. So people attributed to his blessing had nothing to do with his blessing. It's only he foretold the future through astrology. Okay? So, but God knows the truth. God knows the truth. Bilam is worthless. In the context of blessing, he says, "Let me bless them." What do you mean, "Let me bless them"? You're trying to pull the wool over God's eyes, but you don't have the power to bless, because blessing is dependent upon you have to have something good in you. There's nothing good about Bilam. So what do you mean to say, "Let me bless them"? He believed that he hoodwinked everybody else. He's going to hoodwink God, as we'll see in a moment. He believed that there's certain areas that God doesn't know accurately the truth, and therefore he could even deceive God. So he said, "Let me bless them," because God's not aware that he maybe does have the power to bless. Hashem says, "No." It's like you say to the scorpion, whatever this insect is, not your honey, not your bite, because Hashem is telling you, something. Your blessing is a curse, because it's purely to mislead people. You have no relevance to blessing. That's how we learned the closing statement of Hashem. They don't need your blessing, because in essence, his blessing was a curse, because he did not have the power to bless. But what about, let me curse them from here? What is that all about? So I was thinking that later we find that Hashem said to Moshe, "You're not going into the land. You're not going into the land because he struck the rock rather than speaking the rock," so on and so forth. So he says, but he supplicated Hashem, "Allow me to see the land, to see the land." So why do you want to see the land? Because as it says, that Moshe Rabbeinu had such an ayin tova. Anything that his eyes, he laid his eyes upon, there was bracha. And nobody loved Klal Yisrael more than Moshe Rabbeinu, because they were God's people, and anything that would bring glory to Hashem was the ultimate in Moshe Rabbeinu. So when he would look at the land, which is for Klal Yisrael, he would have the most positive eye on it. That's why he wanted to go into the land, for the sake of Klal Yisrael. So Hashem says, "Go up to the mountain and you'll see from the mountain, and miraculously, I'll allow your eye to see every bit of the land. Because the reason why you go into the land is for the sake of Klal Yisrael, that your eye should see every part, because anything your eye sees will bring about the greatest bracha, because you have that eye of Tova. Miraculously, I'll allow you to see every bit of the land, although humanly it's impossible, so that bracha should come about. That's the way it's explained later. The Mefarshim explain it. So meaning like this, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Does a person deserve to be destroyed, wiped off the face of the earth? If Bilam was going, he wanted to lay his eyes upon the Jewish people. That's what he wanted to do. His eye is as it says in Pirkei Avos, his eye in raw. There's no worse eye than Bilam's eye. If he lays his eye on the Jewish people, they will be totally annihilated. So he says, let me curse me from where I am. Because factually, they don't have a perfect record. They don't. So if that's the case, they deserve level of punishment. Allow my eye, let me be the prosecutor, but I won't be a prosecutor with my eye will come upon them, because God understands what kind of eye he has. He has the eye in the most extreme level, but allow me to curse them here, and they're worthy of the curse. They deserve the curse because they failed in the past, because the record is not perfect. That's why he says, so Hashem says, no. Nevertheless, there's nobody perfect, and therefore I don't want you to curse them. Even though there's a basis for prosecution, because of my midas arachmim, I will not allow it to happen. He said, let me bless them. So he thought here he'd hoodwink God. Because there's nothing, you have to have some aspect of goodness in you that bracha should be effective. Hashem says, your blessing is a curse. Because it's only to mislead. Because as we said, what his blessing in the past has always been because he knew through astrology what the future will bring. Fundamental concept from the Orach Chaim HaKadosh we have by the Meraglim that they want to send scouts to scout out the land. So Hashem says, I will pick who they are. And he names everyone. They have to be the princes of the tribes. And initially it says he sent Anoshim. Anoshim. He chose Anoshim. What are Anoshim? So the two terminologies. Either Anoshim means tzaddikim or ksherim. At that time, they were tzaddikim. So you normally would say they became corrupted later. After they'd seen the land, it was a misinterpretation. They came back with ominous reports, and that's when they became Rishoyim. They become evil. But over there, the Pasuk says they had gone and they returned. So Rashi cites Chazal, just as when they returned, they were Rishoyim. When they had left, they were also Rishoyim. So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh asks, but initially it says at the beginning of the parsha that when God told them to choose these people, they would tzaddikim. So how could you tell me that as when they returned to Rishon, when they left to Rishon, they would tzaddikim? That's the Orach Chaim HaKadosh's question. So Orach Chaim HaKadosh says a phenomenal principle. There's a concept known as shlich shalom kavoso, that if you appoint an agent, the agent has the power to carry out everything the one who commissions him. He's empowered by the one who he represents. So he says that empowerment not only gives you the ability to act in the stead of the one who appoints you, but that connection has an influence on the shliach of the mishalech. So since the Jews themselves questioned, they had an issue with trust of God, they didn't trust God. So the moment they represented these people who lacked in trust, they were affected negatively, and they themselves questioned because of that linkage to the people representing them. This is the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says. Therefore, initially when they were chosen, they were tzaddikim. But once they became the shlichim, they became the agents, and that connection was made, that connection representing them had that negative effect on them. So therefore, that's what it means when they had returned, it was like they left. Just as when they returned, they were Rishoyim. When they left to go to scout out the land, they're ready with the agents. So because they were the agents, therefore, they already were minimized and compromised with that level of connection. That was the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Alan, you remember it well.
I do, Rabbi.
Okay.
So they were just they were inferior to.
So the question is, all Klal Yisrael actually were weak in this area. So what Kolev and Yeshua, right? So firstly, it says Kolev nearly succumbed. Why did he not succumb? Because he went he went and prostrated himself on the graves of the Ovos, and he prayed that he should not be ensnared and drawn into this. Meaning he had a very difficult time. Even the other Meraglim, they still had Bechira. If they lost their choice when they connected to represent the people, they're not held accountable. There shouldn't be any level of culpability. The answer is they had Bechira. But due to this connection, they chose to go south rather than maintain who they were. Kolev and Yeshua, Kolev was being pulled in every direction. He took the initiative to go against that, and ultimately that's the reason why he was in the safe place. Only because he was a scholar. He didn't allow himself to be drawn. The Yeshua, he received the bracha from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu added a yud to his name. Kol Yeshiach Hashem. Hashem should protect you. If not for that bracha, Yeshua would have been ensnared. So it's a separate question of Chofetz Chaim. So why did he give a bracha to Yeshua? Why did he give a bracha to the others? Separate. But that's the reason. That's why they were. But the connection itself to all of them, Representative Clausen created this problem. So what I said, you always say that something in the positive is minimally the equivalent in the negative. So what about if you connect it to something good? To something good? So also, an ordinary person, and the Gemara says we find that the Pras, the Euphrates, is called Nahar HaGodol, Nar Pras, the great river, the river of Pras. So the Gemara asks, when we read about the 4 rivers that went out from Gan Eden, Pras is not the greatest of all the rivers. So why does the Torah refer to the Pras, to the Euphrates, and Nahar HaGodol, Nar Pras? The Gemara asks this question. The Gemara answers, you have a great king, and the king has an ambassador. The ambassador, maybe in terms of himself, is a commoner, but if he represents the king, because of that level of association, he's considered a person who's going to be revered and respected by people who are greater than what the minister is, than the ambassador. Why? Because he represents the greatest king. Even though the river itself is not the greatest of the 4 rivers that come out of Gan Eden, but because it flows by Eretz Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael is the location, the most prominent location in the world, because it's Eretz HaKadosha. Therefore, automatically, the river assumes the special distinction. It becomes Nahar HaGodol, not Pras, because of this association. That's the Gemara's answer. So if a person represents somebody who's very special, although he doesn't have that potential or that capacity, but the moment he links to somebody who has that special capacity, because of that connection, he has an ability which goes beyond his own ability. He becomes empowered because of that connection. Goes the other way. Okay? So we said with this that we find by the Mishkan, the Orach Chaim HaKadosh points out the dictate to build the Mishkan was everything was to Moshe Rabbeinu. Everything was to Moshe. And the Jews were the agents of Moshe to actualize the Mishkan. So the Orach Chaim asks why, if the Jews ultimately were going to build the Mishkan, why was the dictate given to Moshe Rabbeinu? So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh explains, because Hashem wanted Moshe should be the beneficiary of the building of the Mishkan. So therefore, every aspect of the Mishkan that was built through one of his agents. So since we say Shlich Shem Kamoso, so therefore, he is accredited for the building of the Mishkan, although he didn't actually build it, because every person who was involved was the agent of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what the Orach Chaim HaKadosh explains. So I wanted to say, with the principle that he says by the Meraglim, that like this, we know that every component of the Mishkan had to be infused with a special kavanah. What was that kavanah based upon? It was based upon the dimension of the person. The people themselves, even though they were special, compared to Moshe Rabbeinu, they were ordinary. But the moment you link to Moshe Rabbeinu and you become his representative, you his shliach, you merit levels of understanding which go beyond your own capacity, beyond your own limitation. So that's the reason why. The moment they became the shluchim of Moshe Rabbeinu, if the mitzvah would have been on themselves, their ability was limited to who they were. But now that the mitzvah is to Moshe, and the only way they're able to actualize this mitzvah is through shlichus. So the moment they connect to Moshe Rabbeinu, now their level of ability expands beyond their own limitation. Because now you're connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu's dimension is actually impacts on the shliach, so they have greater siyata d'shmaya, which they wouldn't have had if they wouldn't be connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. That's how we explained it in the past. That's the positive side. Okay? We find later, Bilam did give a bracha, right? And here he says, they don't need your bracha. We don't want your bracha. We don't want your stink. So we explained it because he was a fraud. And even Balak knew it, that he doesn't have the ability to bless. Why? Because he should have asked for a blessing, not that he should curse the Jews. If Balak was only should be protected, so that confirms he did not have the ability to give bracha. Jay, you recall the Gemara. Jay didn't take his Advil this morning. Okay. So the Gemara says, what's the shaila? What's the question? When the Kohen officiates, is he shlucha didan or is he shlucha derachmana? Is he the agent of the person who he's officiating on his behalf? So there's that connection. So since the person is directly benefiting from the Kohen, he's not permitted. Because within the context of the neder, he cannot be benefited because that's a direct connection. But he's shlucha derachmana, he's not representing the Jew. He has a responsibility. Hashem says, you be the officiant. You act on my behalf. And part of his responsibility is bring the korban. So he's not the shliach of the Jew. As a result of that, he's permitted to officiate on behalf of the Jew. That's the Gemara. And the Gemara leaves it unresolved, this question, in the Dorim. Well, they're called shluch de Rachman, shluch iman. The shluch Rachman is the shliach of the merciful one, or our shliach. Okay? So now, based on the principle we're saying now, we're all born with the potential. But a person, what he does l'shem shamayim. He does it purely for the sake of Hashem. No self-interest. So now, whose agent are you? I'm Hashem's agent. I'm not acting on my behalf. There's no shlo l'shmo. It's purely for the sake of Hashem. So if you connect on that level, it's purely for the sake of Hashem. Hashem is unlimited. So that means automatically you're able to draw from an unlimited source to be able to bring about things. So if a person lives a life as shlucha derachmano, what you're able to bring about is not to be believed. It's a Mishnah Pirkei Avos. It says that a person who does the Shema, it says schus avosim misayosam. It says a person does something the Shema, the merit of his forefathers assist him. But nevertheless, although he can only succeed because he needs the merit of the Avos HaKadoshim, of the patriarchs, he's fully accredited as if it's himself. As if he couldn't do it on his own. Couldn't. He needs the schus of the Avos to bring this about. But because he did it lishma, as a result of that, he's able to draw from the schus of Avos, and he's fully credited as if he did it independent himself. Well, we're explaining things this way. The lishma caused you to make that level of connection. So who do I represent? I represent Hashem. Once you represent Hashem, it goes beyond your own schus. Your own schus, you couldn't bring this about because you have a limitation. But the moment you do it, lishma means it's not me. I'm doing it for the sake of Hashem. As a result of that, what level of assistance do you get? It goes beyond your own limitation. And nevertheless, you're fully accredited, although you had limitation, because the only reason why you're able to draw from that is because he chose to do it lishmo. That's the understanding of Mishnah Pirkei Avos. Later, and when Bilam beat his donkey, the donkey went into its narrow location and pressed his leg against the wall, he started to beat the donkey. So what does the Torah say over there? Vayiftach Hashem es pi also. Hashem opened the mouth of the donkey, and the donkey started to speak. And that ability to speak, the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, there were 10 things that were created in the twilight period right before Shabbos. One of the things that was created was Pia Osom. The mouth of the donkey that he should be able to speak was created for that particular moment when the donkey spoke to Bilam, after he beat him. It says, Vayiftach Hashem es Pia Osom. So the Sefarno explains the words he says, as David says in Tilim, Hashem Srosai Tiftach Ufi Agiti Losecha. You understand? What is one thing I have to do with enough? Yiftach Hashem es Pia Osom. We're asking Hashem, open our mouths and allow us to speak your praises. Meaning, just as the donkey can only speak because Hashem created that ability, otherwise the donkey couldn't speak. That we have the power of speech. It's not like the function of lifting your hand. That's Hashem's Srosai Tiftoch. When we speak, and in many ways that we're able to speak, it's not just a human function. It's all Hashem's Srosai Tiftoch v'yagiti losecha. That's the way Marshiv used to explain it. But I think I want to say slightly different at this time. I always ask a question. The Shmon Esrei is introduced with Hashem Srosai Tiftoch v'yagiti losecha. I mean, all day we speak, right? Without any pre-thought. We wake up, you start speaking. So why, before we say the Amidah, before we enter into the audience with Hashem, as the Gemara says that Shmon Esrei is ki'ilu omid b'fnei melech, like you're standing before the king, you're having the audience. What do you say? Hashem Srosai Tiftoch v'yagiti losecha. Why? What are we saying? Could you imagine? You go before a mortal king, and this king has no patience for anything but unless it's for the right reason. And the king has a sense you're deceiving him, and you're not really sincere, and you're not real, and you're not authentic. And he picks up while you pitched him. What happens? What does that touch in the king? A level of anger, because it's total disrespect. I mean, you're trying to deceive the king by trying to somehow say it in a way that you're going to that I should believe it's something where I know differently. One of the 13 Ikrei Emun is Hashem knows our actions and he knows our thoughts. Okay? Could you imagine? You start the Shmon Esrei. So I said, every aspect of our lives, we have control. Hashem gives us bechira. We have free choice. Should I give tzedakah? Should I not give tzedakah? So it's within my ability to put my hand in my pocket and put the money in that tzedakah box or to write the check. To observe Shabbos or not observe Shabbos. To refrain or to act. The positive, negative. Everything is within the context of your ability. There's one thing we don't have control over, which is very difficult, our thought process. We start the Shmon Esrei. As much as you want to be focused, there are many things that go on in our lives. Things filter into our minds, and we think about other things. So if you're singing God's praises, and all of a sudden you have nonsense coming into your mind, your meeting, your vacation, what you're going to eat, whatever it is, it's a total disrespect. So although the words are praise, but it's not tilosecha, it's not praise, because Hashem knows when you're saying those words, your mind is elsewhere. So it turns out the words are not only not praise, it's a disgrace. It's what we say, you're being two-faced. You're saying one thing, but your mind is somewhere else. Therefore, The request is Hashem says, give me the ability to, when I speak, the word should truly be your praise. Because I don't have full control over that. To connect the mind with the words. That's what we're talking about. That's what said. So that's direct divine intervention. That's what we're asking. The word should truly be praised. So the way I understand it now is this. V'yiftach Hashem es pi also. Why was the donkey able to speak? Because there were 10 things Hashem created, Ben Hashmoshos, during the twilight period between Friday, the 6th day, and Shabbos. One was pi also. So why was the donkey able to speak? Because God created that ability, otherwise he couldn't speak. And the words that it spoke. Because God created the ability it should speak those words and communicate that message to Bilam, exactly what he said to Bilam. That we're able to speak in the certain contexts, God gives us that ability. It's not the power of speech. The power of speech, when you wake up and you start talking, that's no different than lifting your arm and anything else. But Hashem says, that the words should be the appropriate words. That what you say is what you mean. That's no different than the donkey speaking.